It started with a vision for how the internet should work, how it could work.
It really should be possible for anyone to just kind of wave their hand and carve out a piece of cyberspace and create a world of their own.
But the technology to achieve such a vision simply did not exist.
There's no way that you can have really high throughput and also have all these security and fairness properties. I was able to convince myself it's not possible. And I set it aside, and it would come back and haunt me. And it would keep nagging at me. And so I would pick it up again and set it aside again. And this kept going for years.
3 years later, Lehman had a breakthrough, the hashgraph consensus algorithm. In 2015, Manson Lehman founded Swirls to battle test the algorithm in private permissioned environments. And the following year, Lehman published a technical paper. But in order to realize the vision of a fairer, more secure digital future for all, the world needed a trust layer, a public ledger built on hashgraph.
Okay, it looks like we are down to the final seconds here.
3, 2, 1. Open access.
The network is open. As of this moment, we have council member nodes online, ready to take transactions from anyone, anywhere in the world.
Since open access, Hedera has witnessed exponential growth on the network, with billions of real-world transactions, hundreds of applications, and tens of thousands of ecosystem developers. The Hedera Council has gone from strength to strength, growing to 29 members on 6 continents, stewarding the network responsibly and ensuring its longevity for generations to come. Hello, future.
Awesome. Love that intro. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is our HIPS community call, where it's my pleasure to introduce you several guests here who will be presenting HIPS, the latest improvement proposals on the network. We had a Twitter poll and asked you guys which ones you thought, based on the ones that are in the pipeline that you would like to see. And based on the results of that poll, we have 3 HIPs, and I'm excited to have these authors come up and present to you about them. Without any further ado, let's talk about myself. I'm a developer advocate. My name is Michael Garber. I work at Hashgraph. Been a developer advocate here for about 2.5 years. I maintain the HIPS repository, and previously I worked at a blockchain consulting company called ChainYard. And I also created a immutable free speech platform on Hedera called Forum. I'm also your host. So, howdy. Okay, so what's up with this technical call is that we have a couple of links here that you can view this call at. We have a live Twitter that you can find us at the Hedera Devs account, or you can find us at the Hedera Hashgraph YouTube channel, where this stream is happening right now. Also, put your comments in Twitter or on YouTube chat, and we should see them here, and we'll respond to them as this goes. Cool. All right, so what's in order? We have on GitHub. This whole call is for an open source software initiative to bring more transparency and trust to the network. So you guys, the community, other developers get a more open, transparent feel of how improvements come to the network. And further in that vein, we look at where our code base lives, and that's in the Hashgraph org. This is where we have like our smart contracts, our several other different code repositories. And then we have a Hedera Dev organization GitHub account. And here you'll find a bunch of code examples. This was brought forth by the DevRel team. You'll see demos there. So shout out to Ed and Brendan for putting that up. And just feel free while this stream is going on to tweet at bguys, that's Brendan, or me, Michael Garber 87, or just comment on the YouTube stream. All right. So in this call, what we're going to do is go through some intros, and you guys will get to meet the authors that are championing these hips, including Michael Cantor, Justin Atwell, and Stanimir Stoyanov. I hope I didn't butcher that too much. And they'll present their hips 991, 1009, and 1010. I'm really excited about these, particularly 991, because it brings a new way of generating revenue for the network. And also the Schema registry. That's awesome. I've been and working closely with Justin on seeing the updates come across with that, and very excited about that. And then Stanimir from LimeChain. We'll talk to you about updating custom fees from smart contracts. Okay, so here is the lineup, and without any further ado, I will just let you guys introduce yourselves one by one, starting from left to right. Michael, would you like to go ahead and tell everybody who you are? And
yeah, thanks, Michael. It's always cool to have another Michael on the same call. For those who don't know me, I'm Michael Cantor, founder and CEO of Tierbot, and I'm also the co-creator of Hashinals on Hedera. At Tierbot, we work on getting you the data the moment that you need it and not a moment less. And today I'll be presenting HIP 911.
awesome. Justin?
Hey everybody, sorry I don't have my camera on. I'm currently en route to Michigan and I thought we'd be done, but unfortunately Chicago traffic had other things in mind. So yep, lead developer advocate. I'm in mostly sustainability, do some supply chain stuff, and really good at grilling food. Yeah, I've been involved in Hedera for a long time, and yeah, that's pretty much me.
Awesome. May, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm May Chan, CEO of Hashback and one of the co-founders as well. Justin and I have a good history in Hedera. We both entered the ecosystem at about the same time, and we were both putting in our applications for Hedera at the same time. He got in, I didn't. I went on to found the leading wallet on Hedera, and it's been a fun ride ever since.
Cool. Stanimir?
Hello, I'm Stanimir. I'm a software engineer here at LimeChain. We are one of the leading companies for blockchain canceling and development. I am part of the team that works closely with Hashgraph in developing the Hedera network. And yeah, I've been here for about a year. So yeah, that's basically my side.
Awesome. All right, great. Yeah, and this is a great group of people. I think you guys will be really excited about what they have to share. All right, let's get started. Hedera improvement proposals. For those of you who are new and don't know about them, kind of described as the DNA of the network. This is where feature sets are proposed to the network, and we have this whole process that is done. It starts with a discussion somewhere, and then a champion of that discussion comes forth and fills out a HIP template that you'll find here on the GitHub in the Hashgraph org under the repository Hedera improvement proposal. And you fill out that template, open up a pull request, and anyone anywhere can do this. So this is how we bring feature sets to the network in a decentralized way. And it just kind of lets us collect community thoughts. And yeah, here is the HIPS website. You can go to hips.hedera.com and see all the ones that are currently live on the site. And then if you want to track HIPs that are being worked on and thought out, fleshed out by the community, go to the Hashgraph, the HIPS repo in the Hashgraph org, and find them there inside pull requests. to get more insight about the details of the HIPS process than what we're just sharing here and what we will share here, go to check out HIP 1, which is on the hips.hedera.com website. And that will outline the different types of HIPs, the statuses, and that sort of thing. Okay. All right, so this HIP is this slide is a view to you guys to show you kind of from start to finish the life cycle of a HIP. So as I was saying before, anyone anywhere can start up with an idea, propose a conversation to talk about an improvement on the network, and then that HIP is a champion in that discussion fills out a HIP template on the HIPS repository, opens up a pull request, and that pull request gets reviews. At that point, it is in the draft state. I'm not going to go through all these. They can be withdrawn or deferred for a later time. Then the review process formally starts, and that's when the author kind of signals that they are ready to go and go through this formal review process. So they'll make the pull request active, and at that point it will be in review state. And this is the open review state where anyone in the community can come and share their thoughts, and we really highly encourage that, because that will bring a lot of transparency, engagement, and trust, and increased decentralization in that process. From the review state, there's a couple of things that can happen depending on the type of HIP. And I'm not going to get into too many details about the different types, but depending on the type of HIP, and put it more simply, if it is a HIP that touches the code at the core protocol, it will be seen by council. And in that case, it will go into last call, which is a period of 2 weeks to get any lingering reviews. And then it will be seen by council, and council will vote on it to accept it or reject it. From this, after last call, they can accept or reject. And then once it's accepted and it's implemented in code, it gets moved to final. In these other states that you see here, active, this happens on HIPs that are not touching the code base. So if it's like a informational HIP or process HIP, it will be in the active state. But all other HIPs will go through this accepted final. And if there's another HIP to replace it, then it will be marked replaced and then superseded by with another HIP. So as part of that, this call, we're really trying to engage you guys to be more involved in the HIPS process. So we get feedback from you guys, because it is your network. So in saying that, we want to get your feedback. We want to get what you think about it. How's it going? And if we can get you engaged here, this is the best place to be engaged to increase decentralization. At the end of the day, that's what we're doing, right? We're increasing decentralization. And this is not just unique to Hedera and HIPS. I mean, there's EIPs, there's AVAX has their own improvement proposals. HIPS is our implementation of this, and it really, what it does is it drives transparency, engagement, more active community, and at the end of the day, we're taking these systems, these decentralized systems, and increasing that transparency and trust to sort of open up and prove to the world what can be unburdened by what has been. And so that's kind of the long and short of it. So let's go ahead and get into it. All right, starting with HIP 991, permissionless revenue generating topics IDs for topic operators. I am really excited about this HIP because it offers another way to bring revenue to the network. And I'm going to hand it over to Michael to let you guys know all about it. Thanks.
Thanks, Michael. It's me again. I'm also really excited about this HIP In particular, reading the title now of the HIP in GitHub, I realize it's a bit of a mouthful. But I think in success, this could be one of the coolest tips that we've had in a long time, and just how it changes the state for the network and benefits both creators and builders. So maybe let's go into the first slide here. Cool. So permissionless revenue generating topics. Today with topic IDs, if you look at how a topic works, it kind of has two states to it, which is a public and private state. In a public state, you basically create a topic ID without a submission key, which means that anyone on the planet, as long as they have a little bit of HBAR, they can go and submit a message to this topic ID and write to it. This is really cool because it creates these permissionless topics, but at the same time, it is a really wide scope of who can go and write to that topic, and it puts quite a burden on dApps that read from those topics on how to display the data that's in it. How do you trust the data inside a public topic when anyone can submit and write messages to it? The rule kind of comes down to you can't implicitly trust it. You have to go and validate every single message that goes into that topic. So if you've got complicated state, like you're creating a poll of some kind, you have to make sure that every message that has been submitted obeys the rules of that poll. So it could be a little bit burdensome to topic operators and dApps that integrate those public topics. The other way today that you can write to topics is a private topic, or in other words, a topic that has a submission key. A submission key is basically a specialized private key that lets somebody who has that key actually write to a topic. This works really great in a lot of cases because it allows dApps to go and create these submission keys, and then they can write to that topic for their own use cases. However, it has kind of some downsides to it with the private topic ID, in that, well, actually, I think we might be missing a slide in the deck. Oh, there we go. Okay, let's go to the next slide. There we go. So with the private topic IDs, while they enable dApps to go and write on the topic on the user's behalf, unfortunately, they're kind of really centralized. So number one, as we mentioned earlier, a dApp has to go and create a private submission key so that they can write to a topic. So instead of the user writing to the topic directly, a user would most likely fill out some kind of form, hit an API endpoint, and then the application would write on their behalf. That creates a lot of trust. Well, you have to trust that the dApp is writing exactly what you're putting into that form. You have to trust that the dApp is going to maintain that private key. And from the dApp's perspective, it's kind of burdensome, right, to manage that private key forever and make sure that nobody gets a hold of it. Again, users can't write to private topic IDs because the dApp has that private key. And the last thing, which maybe we hadn't considered before, is that topics by themselves can't actually go and generate revenue in any way. They're kind of been used as a proof of state, a message stream, etc., that you can go and parse out. You can't turn them into a revenue generating entity on the network. So that brings us to our next slide. With HIP 991, we're actually going to solve a lot of these problems around the existing state by introducing a new kind of state where a user can, instead of having to use a private key to submit to that topic ID, they can use a fungible token. So let's say in a kind of contrived example, you have a governance token called gov, right? As the owner of this token, you can create a spinoff called vGov, and you can airdrop it over to all of your holders. Now, using that token, users can actually write to the topic ID and submit messages to it. And with this kind of a topic that has configured a fungible token as an accepted payment, you do not need a private key. You don't need a submit key in order to write to it. So let's say the user has the token and the topic creator sets a requirement of 10 vGov tokens to write to it. They go and submit the message with their 10 vGov tokens, and then the 10 vGov tokens are sent over to the topic owner or another entity that they've specified that the tokens to go to, and the message is published. So it's seamless, fast, and it's also gated. So only the folks with the vGov token can write to it. If the user doesn't have the vGov token and they submit that message, then the tokens won't be sent and the message will be denied and it won't write to the topic ID. So with this new state, you've opened up a whole bunch of novel use cases on how you can actually, number one, write to topics without maintaining a cumbersome private key, aka submission key. But more importantly, we can start to think about how is this interesting for the network. So let's go over to the next slide. So just going over some of the details around 991 and how it operates. So essentially, in the same way that you create an HTS token today, topic creators can define either a fixed fee in each bar or fungible tokens as payment. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a fungible token that you need to write to the topic ID, although I think in a lot of use cases that's probably how it'll operate, but you never know. Users will have to pay with that token or submit new messages to topic. And in addition, this HIP will also create a new fee schedule key to topic IDs so that topic owners can modify fees in the future. So an end state for this HIP would be that you can create admin key, submission key, and fee schedule key, where fee schedule key is the new key that'll exist. Let's go to the next slide. So in a success state, we'll have endless new possibilities for dApps. Let's say, for example, somebody goes and they create a dynamic hashional. We've seen this happen before, and I think it's a really cool use case where using dynamic hashionals, you essentially create ad space through your dynamic hashionals, which can later be embedded anywhere, but mostly in the person's wallet. So you create some kind of dynamic hashional, you mint like 10,000 of these, and then you send it to a whole bunch of people on the network, right? Through dynamic hashionals, you can go and update the metadata at any point. Now, what if the update of the metadata could be done by users themselves and not just the person who created the hashional, right? What if I can go and create an advertisement as this NFT and I can pay, 500 HBAR to change the image for everyone on the network that has this NFT. And then the dynamic hashional ends up serving as ad space. And this works because dynamic hashionals are actually written on topic IDs on the network. Specifically, they're using the HCS6 standard, but it works just the same. So in this example, you can turn your dynamic hashional into a revenue source for your business, where anyone could go and write new advertisement to it. And as long as you have the fee, you can keep doing that. And that fee, again, could be an HBAR, it could be in a fungible token. However you want to design it, it's really up to you. Another idea is, let's say you create a dynamic hashional that has seasonal art changes. We've seen this kind of be really common. For example, DGods was one of the big ones to pioneer it, where you have like season 1, 2, 3, etc. So let's say I create this art collection with multiple seasons, and then season 2 is about to kick off, and then I tell my community, hey, in order to upgrade to season 2, it's not going to be an automatic thing. You actually have to pay some fee to go and get your new artwork. So directly through the topic ID, the users can go and pay some amount of HBAR to go and upgrade their NFT instantly. without any input from the founder or the community. It would just be baked into the topic ID. They can go and upgrade their artwork or pull in a completely new image. Additionally, Michael, he mentioned that he created Forum, which is a decentralized forum on HCS. I think one of the cool things with this is you can utilize the HIP literally to block spam on a decentralized forum. If you have your comments section on the topic ID where people post messages to it, you can block messages by requiring needing some kind of token. Maybe that token is called forum, right? And then in order to write a comment, you need forum of some amount, which bots won't be able to get their hands on, but community members will if they perform certain actions. So you can see how this starts to create an economy of things for different platforms that are built on the Hedera consensus service. Lastly, and this is something I'm super excited about as well, is HCS-based voting, where topic owners, in my earlier example, like vGov, can go and airdrop the V token to submit vote messages on the topic. Today, there is, I think, a huge burden, really, if you actually want to use the Hedera consensus service to enable some kind of voting, where the creator of the voting topic ID would have to maintain that submit key, which again, that's really burdensome. And what if they lose that submit key and then all of the governance kind of falls apart on its shoulders? So through HIP 991, I think in success, we open up a whole bunch of new possibilities for the network. And these are just a couple that I've come up with. I know that when this thing goes live, folks will have a whole bunch of ideas that we didn't even think about, and it's going to be really fun and exciting. So that's HIP 991.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. Yeah, I'm super excited about this HIP too. And this HIP is in council review. So I believe it'll be voted on, I think tomorrow is the next meeting. So yeah, so keep the eyes out for that. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Michael.
All right. Let's move him from stage. Justin, who's going to talk to you about May.
Can you add May as well?
I can. Here you guys are. All right, guys.
And
I'll let you guys take it from here.
Well, if you could go ahead and go to the next slide, because I'm still on the road. Yeah. So, yep. Already went through the intros. The ribs, Gardner and rib, very nice. All right, next slide.
That's me. I've done quite a bit of work in the HIP process myself. A lot of it when we first started out with Hashpack. If you've used an NFT on Hedera, it is based off of a HIP that I wrote and had the community provide input into. And that HIP is still alive because we are talking to this in one of the NFT work groups around how to make it better for music NFTs specifically, how to expand it or like make an upgrade to it so that it can encompass more different types of assets. So the HIP process is really interesting to me. And as a community member, I think it's a very powerful way to get involved if you think that there's something that the network could do to make your experience better as a developer, as a builder, or even just as a person who is interested in the tech. It's a really cool process. So I hope that listening to the presentations today gives you ideas on how maybe you could contribute as well.
Yeah, and who knows, you make a HIP and the community likes it, you'll be up on stage here presenting it. So there's some encouragement.
All right. So, if we kind of talk about schema registries in general, they're not new. Schema registry is not a new idea for programming and event structures and things like that. In fact, it's been around for a while, and that's exactly why we need this. So you can really think about a schema as just a contract between a publisher and a subscriber. So there's lots and lots of different things that once you kind of get into the weeds of this, that features get uncovered and makes things a lot more interesting. I know specifically around data validation and compatibility checking with the music NFTs and with the standard HIP standards. May, I know you definitely have lots to add about that one. So, I mean, feel free to chime in on that.
Sorry, I got distracted for just a second. What was the question?
No, just in general, like the difference between music NFTs and then the other NFTs, the standard HIP 412 NFTs, and how the schemas is what really makes those NFTs different.
Yeah. Well, basically, it tells you about the structure of the data, and it puts it in a standardized way that people can read off of and build their platforms around, so that if you want to display a NFT and the image and all the information around it, you can look at a schema that has been defined and be able to display it on your site, and you trust that the information is going to be that way. And anybody who's making an NFT can also build their NFT to that schema. And then they know that any marketplace or any wallet or site that implements that will display it properly. So it's a very powerful way to enable collaboration between different groups. With music NFTs specifically, there are a ton of metadata tags that you can put on them, like the album name, the artist, and then like in an album there are like multiple tracks, so like you can also number the tracks and things like that. So there's a lot of extra data that you can put into a metadata for music NFTs that doesn't exist in an art NFT. And how do you track that? What kind of data goes there? And then once you decide what the data is going to be, how do people who are building a music listener app using NFTs, how do you make sure that they can gather that data? And that, I think, has a lot to do with schemas.
Yep, absolutely. And also want to touch on just the last point on this slide too, that schemas, if you think about the way that HCS works with submitting a message, with creating a topic and all those different things, really the data that's inside the message is just a bag of bits. So what we really want to do is we want to be able to categorize that bag of bits and say, hey, to the developer, if you think about if you're stubbing out models in TypeScript, or if you're in Java, I know a lot of folks use Lombok in Java, but if you don't use Lombok in Java and you're stubbing out your models, it's exactly the same in that you're kind of setting up a blueprint for the object that'll be contained in there. And, for topics and topic messages, knowing the difference, like knowing the data that's in there goes a long way in actually explaining to folks, hey, these transactions are real. These are customers using HCS. This is not a Hedera thing that's running in the background. So yeah, having that sort of analytics too helps a great deal. Michael, if you go to the next slide. Yeah, so a lot of the big ones here is when it comes to versioning. So one of the things that I've been really interested and excited about is real world assets. So tokenizing those real world assets, there's a lot of different things that happen. So right now, if you go and you look at two real world assets, so let's say I had an RWA minted for a bag of chips and an RWA minted for a can of Red Bull. Those are both sitting right in front of me, so that's why I brought them up. But if you're thinking about that, those on the network today, those are just two different tokens, right? Those are two different tokens with two different property sets that probably have two different sets of attributes. But really, at the end of the day, right now, they're both just a token. And so we want to add that granularity back to it, from it just being a token to being able to tell, hey, this is a can of Red Bull and a bag of chips, not just a token. And then there's a lot of stuff too, where, there's a lot of backwards compatibility stuff that we get for free here. So if you look at Web 2, where a lot of the event-driven architecture is based on Kafka and stuff like that, and Google PubSub, Amazon, and Azure PubSub, all of those folks, if you look at how they're ran, all of the data is grouped and differentiated by schemas. And so having a system like ours, if we were to have a schema, then we would be able to directly port a lot of those real-world assets from a Web 2 context, you think about commodities and things like that. Moving those over to a Web 3 context becomes much, much easier, especially in the cloud.
Yeah, it's a really practical question. This thing about managing the different versions of schemas and data as time goes by. I think that when you look at schemas in the Web3 space, it's very like basic. There's not a lot of hard definition of what the data looks like, and usually it's based directly on which platform you're building on. So like, for example, if you wanted to make NFTs on Solana or you wanted to make NFTs on Ethereum, you go to OpenSea and you look at what their thing is. And you go to, I can't remember where, I think it's Meta something, but they basically define the metadata on Solana on a website for one of the marketplaces. And there's no like rigorous definition. And when you're talking about very real world applications and just things that are more than just like casual hobby projects, things like that, the way that you manage the data over time is really, really important. And so having a system like this, having schemas that can be managed and you can version it and you can have backwards compatibility with older types of data is going to open up a lot of avenues for like different kinds of use cases that are just not accessible if you don't have this kind of background, right? Like you don't have this kind of architecture. You're just a hobbyist in an enterprise world if you don't have the ability to track these kind of changes. And I think that that's what makes this really, really exciting, is that this is what the Web 2 world is using, and we're bringing that into the Web 3 world, taking advantage of all of the advantages of having like a public ledger that is immutable, that is readable by anybody, that is trustworthy, all those kind of things.
Yep, absolutely. And there's another one on here that I think I definitely don't know all of the ramifications to it, but more and more of the kind of larger clients that I've brought this schema registry hip to, the more they bring it up. And that is, when you're dealing with AI, almost everything is done by a model. Those models are often very, very large, but at the end of the day, the schema, it literally is the instructions for the AI to learn about your system. So if you were to present an AI and say, hey, this is a schema that represents all of these tokens on the network, the AI would then be able to make a lot of meaningful decisions about what each attribute means rather than having to guess it. And I didn't know a lot of that until I think a couple weeks ago when Ash was telling me about that. He was another DA here at our team. So yeah, but that's all I had. I was trying to make mine short and sweet because Mr. Cantor's was long.
I mean, I think like, just as a background for what this is, it's a really good one to show why it's important. I think that there's a lot of ways that we can, as a community, benefit from it as well. Just look at how standardized NFTs are on Hedera, and it allows for a lot of innovation to happen. And it eases the job for developers and creators across the entire ecosystem when you can just look up a schema and trust that that's what's being used, or you get a piece of data and then you can look for that specific schema property, and now you know what it is, what the shape of the data is. And I definitely see when this comes out, we're going to start putting the HIP 412 schema onto this, and then this is what's exciting, is that now anybody can start contributing to this, building their own schemas to be based off of HIP 412, but extend it to all sorts of different things, like real world assets, or music, or DID is here. DID, I think, is a really great one here, because you have a lot of different information, and that information can live in different places. And there's a lot of privacy implications and stuff as well. And when you know what the shape of the data is, you can then build out those systems and, do a lot of really fancy things. So yeah, I think that this one is going to be definitely one that I'm going to try to adopt into the community, so that as an ecosystem, we can take advantage of just like knowing what the structure of our data is, and therefore become more robust, more flexible, and make the experience a lot easier for everybody.
Yeah, also I wanted to add interoperability. I mean, these schemas, when you look at Web3 and how it's progressing along, the shape of the data is paramount because of its immutable properties and stuff like that. when you're having these systems that want to work together, that shape of the data is going to be very important. And when we have a registry that you can register and get schemas from, that you know that is exactly how it should look, I think it's going to be very useful for a lot of people. So I'm very excited about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and for sure on that part. Totally might get in trouble for saying this, so but that's fine. If you're kind of talking about blockchain to blockchain communication, that's a big deal, because many other blockchains, what you'll see is a lot of their naming, a lot of the things that they do is kind of based off of verbs. You know, it does this, it'll do this for you. But, you know, a lot of the things with Hedera, since we're much more infrastructure facing, we don't necessarily want to tell people how to do it. We want to say, hey, this is what we do, and let the organizations and the people using the software determine how they want to use it. We don't want to be trying to dictate to folks. And I think some of the other blockchains, they kind of do. That's a very narrow window, a very narrow gap of being able to use it. And I don't feel that with Hedera and with schemas. I think it makes it much more extendable where you don't have that problem. But I don't know of one fancy word to make that sound better. So
Extensibility.
See, and that is why we I never would have picked that. You got it though. You got it. Flexible, extendable, all the good things. Yeah.
Cool. All right, guys. Thanks so much for this presentation.
Thank you.
Stay on. There might be some comments at the end, questions. So if you can. All right, guys. Let's get them off the stage and then get Stoyan. Stanimir Stoyanov. Stanimir Stoyanov back on stage. He's going to tell me how much I butchered his name, and I won't mess up next time.
Yeah, don't worry. It's almost perfect. So
awesome. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. You want to go ahead? Thanks to the previous presenters, and this one about Stanimir is going to tell us about 1010 for updating custom fees from smart contracts. You want to go ahead?
Yeah. Okay. So first, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here and present the HIP. And hello from Bulgaria. It's almost 11 here, so I won't get into much detail. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Yeah, I'm here to talk about HIP 1010, or also known as update token fee schedules via smart contracts. As some of you may already know, we already have a functionality to update the custom fees for a given token. That is called token fee schedule update, but it's only available via HTS SDK. With the changes that we introduced with this HIP, we want to expose this logic that's already existing and provide it as a smart contract function. We want to add it to the Hedera token service smart contract. And by that, what we mean is to add two new functions. Why two is the question, as we have one token update transaction. Well, we want to differentiate between fungible and non-fungible tokens, as though those can leverage different custom fees. We have fixed fee and fractional fee for the fungible tokens, and fixed and royalties for the NFTs. And how we want to change this? We also want to be consistent with the previously defined functions, like create token. There we have create fungible token and create NFT, like the update that goes the same, and get token info is in the same way with two separate calls. So yeah, I've listed the names of the functions here. So we can see update fungible token custom fees. The name talks about itself. So we can add new custom fixed or fractional fees, or just reset the existing ones. And for the update NFT, there we have the same thing, the same behavior, just we have the royalty in it. We can go to the next slide. Thanks. Lastly, the way we will do this is to expose this existing HTS logic to the smart contracts. We will add this as a system contract, just like previous codes that we exposed like that, in the same way with the same framework. And yeah, that's basically the overview of the HIP. So yeah, thank you. And if you have any more detailed questions, feel free.
Perfect. Yeah. I really like how this extends the happy Hedera APIs for our token service, so smart contracts can update the custom fees. That's going to be very useful to several people. So thanks, Stoyan. I keep wanting to just call your first name Stoyan, but Stanimir Stoyanov.
I'm used to that. Yeah.
Thank you. We'll just cover briefly. We went over HIP 911 that brought a new stream of revenue to consensus topics that's being voted on. It's in council review right now. Justin in May talked a little bit about native schema registry service and how we would have schemas defined. So devs and users could get those schemas and define their own and versionings and stuff like that. And then finally, we had HIP 1010 with Stanimir telling us about how we're opening up the Hedera APIs for the token service for smart contracts to be able to update the custom fees on those tokens. So thanks. Let's see. I'm going to take everyone off. I'm going to bring those who are here back on the stage and open it up for questions. So yeah, the comment boxes are open, so feel free to bring forth any questions that you might have of any of the HIPs that we covered. And if not, we will end it. Let's see.
I think that this is a great initiative. We definitely, as a community, really like to get involved in the development of the network, and this HIP process has always been available to the community. But it also kind of like, if you don't know the people, if you haven't reached out, it kind of feels like, well, where do I start? What do I do to start contributing to the Hedera network? And, I have this great idea, or I'm trying to do this one thing on the network, and it seems like it's not possible. But is there a way to get that done? Well, the HIP process is a way to get that going. One of the ones that I have noticed as I tinker with the network recently is that smart contracts don't support the Hedera consensus service. So you can't write topic messages with a smart contract. And maybe somebody who finds that important might be like, well, maybe let's just write a HIP around that and propose that and send that in, and then see if Hedera will take that on, and if we can get that kind of functionality in. That's just an example here, right? The fees, the royalty fees on smart contracts is just the same thing. Very powerful functionality on our token service, and there is already some overlap between the Hedera token service and the smart contract service, but being able to add in these extra things through HIPs to address the needs of the community is very, very powerful. So definitely great to see this kind of outreach and exposure to the process so that people can have a way to kind of provide their comments, give back, and have a way to impact the network in a positive way.
Yeah, great. Thanks, May. I appreciate that. And to that, some of the points that you mentioned, I'd like to highlight that anyone can present a HIP. You don't have to have a high degree of technical capability or skills. I think that's one of the misnomers is that when people look at the HIPS process or improvement proposal processes on other networks, not just Hedera, it's the sort of same feedback. It's like, how do I get started? How do I propose a HIP? I'm not technical. Well, you don't have to be technical. You just start a discussion, and if it's interesting, like for instance, is smart contracts talking to consensus topics. That's very interesting to me. That would be enough to start off a conversation with other people who are technically capable to chime in and develop flesh this idea out, and kind of show what can be unburdened by what has been. But that is how you bring these changes to the network. And I'm pretty excited about the HIPS process and the transparency. And so if you're interested in the transparency, if you're interested in engaging in the network, if you want to bring change, if you just have a voice, come to the HIPS repository, come to these calls, voice your questions, your concerns, spark the discussion, and let's get some features on the network. All right, let's see. I don't see any questions that are, I don't know if you can answer this one, May.
That one is probably better to direct at our main Twitter after the spaces, but we do work with the Citadel Wallet team, and we are really excited for what they're building, and hopefully they will come out with some news soon. Definitely. If when the hardware wallet launches, we will be supporting it. We are deep in discussions with their development team, so looking forward to that for sure.
Thanks. There's this question: will the highlighted HIPs jeopardize regulatory compliance? To my knowledge, they won't. But this HIPs process is a way to voice these concerns and bring them up into various different chats for comments on the improvement proposal itself. I'm not exactly sure which HIP you're talking about.
I think Schema registry, just for what it's worth, will actually help greatly with regulatory compliance, because the person that's utilizing the system will be able to tell regulators what data means what, rather than just having to take their word for it. It's hard to say, there's always a degree of privacy, but pretty much everyone knows. I mean, if you're using a schema for your data, then it allows you to be more upfront with regulators, because you can kind of show schema evolution over time alongside the data evolution. So generally speaking, it's a better thing for regulatory compliance.
All right. And if Stan, if you care to go ahead and put that comment on whichever HIP you think that you have a question about there, and put it on the HIP itself at the Hedera Improvement Proposal repository on GitHub in the Hashgraph repo. That's the best way to get your voice heard. All right, we have about 5 minutes left. I don't see any other comments coming in, but we'll give it a minute or two. And if not, anything else anyone else wants to add? Stanimir? Looks like Michael kind of had to go somewhere, so we'll have to circle back with him. Yeah, some of these questions I can't exactly answer, and they're not in alignment with this HIPS discussion, so I'm not going to bring them up. I can't answer that question, Paul. I don't have any context. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for joining in. What I'm really excited about is next HIPS call. There's going to be a lot of very valuable HIPS, in my opinion, coming to the network, and I think that it will be exciting for developers, smart contract developers, and just the greater ecosystem. So stay tuned and come back. Just keep coming back. So thanks so much, and have a good day, guys. All right. See ya.